Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber here, joined with Laura once again in audio format, covering episode 5, House of the Dragon, Regent. So Laura, do we have a most theatrical character of the week?
I really like Simon Strong personally, but I don't know as though he's really theatrical as much as he's really great at the subtle dig.
Someone asked me a couple days ago who my favorite new character was, and I was like, it's absolutely Simon Strong. Is there any contest, really?
If I don't want the smoke was a face.
I love too that he's out there in Harrenhal sugar babying at its finest. He got Daemon to pay for the renovations, and I love that for him.
Me too. I do too. I was actually just thinking about that because Damon was like, "What, you don't have any gold?" And he was like, "Actually, I don't." He was like, "I have just enough to keep everybody fed and warm."
Mhm. Some of these scenes in Harrenhal, I'm still not sure. I'm like, is Daemon even meeting with all of these people? Like,
No,
is it real or
I'm not
not?
sure. I think he's on a werewood journey, which would be a modern equivalent of taking peyote. Like the man is
Oh,
spending the majority of his time hallucinating, coming in and out of these meetings. Like he just half the time wakes up from whatever he's in and he's like, "Oh shit, I'm in a meeting. I better say something." like, but instead
man,
of being like,
only a man could get away with that. Only a
"Exactly."
man.
And instead of being like, "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't hear what you said," he just responds as though he's been cognizant the whole time.
I wasn't prepared for the next level of incest scenes that we've had on this show, but
Ma'am,
I'm not surprised.
they need to cut it out with that.
I saw a meme earlier that was like brother and sister, I'm okay with that. Aunt and nephew, I'm okay with that, but mother and son, that's where I draw the line.
Agreed. I don't know if I want to say I'm okay with it, but I can step outside of it and be like, this is fine. But oh my God, that like dream about his mother, I was like, ugh, turn it off. Just turn it off.
That was like Craster in Game of Thrones. He was
Yeah, and he was one of my most hated characters in Game of Thrones.
new theory. Daemon Targaryen is time traveling caster.
Okay,
Craster.
I actually did see a theory that involves Damon though. In this
Oh,
very similar. I'm not gonna like go on and on about it, but I did see a theory and it was just like a fun one, like, wouldn't this be fun if Damon was actually cold hands?
oh.
Which I thought
I
was fun.
mean,
I mean, I think we know that that's not the case, but they were talking about what if Damon ends up north of the wall, like somehow suspended in time.
that would kind of be like the perfect payback for all of his wrongdoings.
It really would
A
be.
little karmic justice.
You know, not to like completely switch gears, but I gotta tell you what the most annoying part of this episode is.
Ooh, tell me.
Carting Maylisa's head through King's Landing as though dragons have political ambition. Because the whole
Girl,
time,
girl, the traitor
the
Melees, the
traitor
traitor
Maylis. Oh,
Melees,
I'm
right.
sorry. I forgot that the dragon herself was vying for the throne.
Kristen Cole, you are so dumb. You are so dumb.
Uh,
Like that's a PR nightmare. Another
Absolutely.
terrible choice. Another terrible
Well, you and I
choice.
had talked about this like last week after seeing the preview that included the cart scene and you know how we were talking about that first of all dragons don't have political ambition and secondly the Targaryens are so reliant on the implied godlike strength of a dragon to bolster the godlike strength of their name to rule.
Mhm.
Why would you shit on your own reputation like this? Why would you make a dragon look like a mortal being?
Exactly, exactly. And two, there's on top of that to build on it, Westeros is superstitious. In
Yeah, that's
A
a
Game
thing.
of Thrones,
Yeah, they are.
when they find the dead direwolf and the stag, like the antler from the stag that had like pierced it,
Oh, girl, they were ready.
Everybody was like, no,
They were
buddy.
like,
Like,
oh, something bad is gonna happen.
right, because that's like the sigil of the Stark. So like carting this dead dragon through the streets, like that is a bad omen. That is bad juju. That like they just that terrible PR.
Terrible. They definitely need a new PR manager. Definitely.
I almost wonder if Gwen Hightower is somehow going to be a type of foil to Kristen Cole because
That would bring me so much joy.
yeah, because they already have a little bit of like a tense relationship. And at some point I think I want these two characters to kind of have more animosity towards each other.
Well, I have something to add that might help your theory.
Tell me.
So, right now, Christian Cole is unraveling the protection he gets from Alicent.
Yes.
Like the way she was like, I did not give you leave to speak my name, bucko. And then she just turns around and takes off. I was like, oh, buddy, you have overplayed your hand finally.
Yeah, and I think too, like she's done. Like she is done. That scene in the small council meeting where she's like, the king is incapacitated, who's going to lead? On one hand, I'm like, oh, that, kind of sucks for her. The acting was really good in that scene, like that look on her face of like, oh my God, is this really happening? But the idea that she thinks that they're going to allow her to rule, that's insanity.
It's so interesting to me that she still has not come to the point of acceptance where she sees that Rhaenyra is really the type of ruler that she herself would like to see lead the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, like that's the irony in all of it.
Definitely. No, that is definitely the irony in it. Alicent, for as much as I dislike her, watching all of her allies turn their back on her in that meeting in order to appoint her psychopathic son, Aemond. And she was like, really? We're gonna give him the keys to the kingdom. And
Him.
everybody is like, this is a good idea.
I do love that Maester, the Grand Maester, was like, well, the Queen during the time of Viserys, like she did do a good job, like leading in his name, and everybody goes like, yeah, all right, guys, shut up, sit
Yeah,
down,
they're all
like
like,
not gonna
yeah,
happen.
in a time of peace. And I love how the men keep bringing up in a time of peace to the women who are in like leadership positions here as though any of them were alive for the last war.
Right? I did like how Rhaenyra kind of
Yeah,
clapped back.
Rhaenyra does a better job of like focusing her thoughts and clapping back than Alicent does by a long shot.
Yeah, it's so sad to see a character like Alicent who all she wants is agency and a little bit of like power for herself, but she's honestly not intelligent enough to realize that she's like put herself in this situation and now she's going to have to deal with the consequences of it. Not saying that, the situation is okay, but
Right.
it is really like it's going the route of Greek tragedy for Alicent Hightower. And on one hand, I do feel like a smidge of like sadness for her, but also like the lack of forethought, the lack of like planning things out and thinking things through makes it really, really hard to be like super sympathetic towards her.
Definitely. Definitely.
We also have, in the scheme of all of these episodes so far, I feel like this was the most character driven episode that we've got in this series
I would
as a
agree.
whole.
I would definitely agree.
I was perusing social media and I don't know, like maybe I like gaslit myself because after I watched this episode, I was like, this is objectively the best episode of the season. I don't know how anyone could disagree with that. It was giving me all of these kind of feelings of watching earlier seasons of Game of Thrones where I'm like, all right, we're hanging out with the characters. We're getting to see, like, oh, how does this person that we haven't spent that much time with step up to like new challenges and adversity, and like who are they, what's their personality like, how are they going to maneuver this situation. I went on social media and people were like, this was the most boring episode of television.
What?
I'm, yeah, some people hated this. And I felt like, I was like, Oh,
I love
I
this
get.
episode.
I thought it was so good.
Here's some of the things that I really enjoyed is we finally see Missaria at work. Like I think it was towards the end of the episode, we see her representative going into King's Landing and like, they've already got the gates closed. They're not trying to let anyone in or out. And she tells him like, I'm here for Missaria. And he was like, oh, wait, that totally changes whether I'm going to let you in. And then obviously he sneaks her in. So we finally get to see Missaria at work, her network in motion, instead of just hearing about her network.
Right.
And then another thing that I really liked was the scene with Hugh, like
Yes.
Hugh the Hammer, where they're trying to leave the gates. I got to tell you, he looks like a real dragon rider. When you see him, I'm like, that man needs a dragon.
That man, the blonde hair, I think too, it's just like, like the stereotypical, like he's like a blacksmith type guy.
Yeah.
So like, he's just got that look, Yes. Like, he's just a beefy man.
He looks like a hero. He has,
he does.
A hero's look about him.
Yeah, they should have hired him for, the new Witcher.
That would have been great. He would have fit the role perfectly.
Yeah. I think that scene too with like the small folk kind of like rushing the gate. I liked it, in terms of like what it does for the plot and what it does for the overall story, because I have a feeling, I think I remember how that all comes into play later. But also, I do just enjoy this general sense of like the small folk freaking out about like what's going to happen to them now that they've got Aemond in charge, who is just belligerent on Vhagar. He's out here doing things that's going to cause retaliation. They're not safe in there. They're not safe in King's Landing. Everybody knows it. And now they're locking the gates on them. Oh man, this is like I have to assume that George R.R. Martin was like inspired by like, I don't know, like North Korea or like the Berlin Wall, where you've got like a group of people in a sector of a city. Nobody can come, nobody can go. It's isolated. And just how much of like a brutal and like weird situation that is. Being a captive, being a hostage in your own city. And it's like that is not going to turn out okay.
No, I'd really like to see the small folk fight back. I mean, they have the numbers in King's Landing, because if I'm correct, we're talking about like hundreds of thousands of residents, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing too with like these dragons that they're carting through the city. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because I'm trying not to like
if you think about
get too spoilery here.
Right. And Vhagar isn't exactly in top fighting form right now. She took a lot of damage from Meleys during their fight, and I think that they were talking about this at Dragonstone, like getting, Jace brought it up, getting more dragon riders out here and attacking with with more of the larger dragons at one time.
Yeah. I really enjoyed Jace as a whole this episode.
So did I.
Because he's really doing things. I loved him. Oh my gosh. So I'm jumping all over the place. The scene where he flies to the twins. I don't know what it was about that scene that made me feel a similar way as I did when I watched the first Dune movie. Like, I don't know if it was something about the costuming or what, but like, it was so simplistic in the fact that he's just having like a picnic on the bridge. Like, they didn't bring this meeting into the castle and have it in like another damp, dark room. Whoever was in charge of this scene was like, no, we're going to do this outside on the bridge in between the twins. And I thought that was just a really cool visual. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I enjoyed the phrase. I liked the phrase.
You know what I appreciate about the phrase is they're always there to not only cut a deal, but to make sure that they get something good out of it.
Exactly. That was some good negotiating.
Yeah, and everybody wants a dragon. Like, all of Rhaenyra's allies are like, send a dragon.
I have to assume that everyone is just scared out of their minds of Vhagar at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you hear, who was the woman that the Aaron woman in the veil.
Yeah, Lady Aaron.
Lady Aaron, and she's like, of course, we get to hear the whole spiel about how the Eyrie is impregnable, and then, of course, it's except from an attack from above. And I would like her to regale me of when the last time the Eyrie was attacked, because they seem very paranoid about it constantly, but they're also like, it's impregnable, you can't get in.
From my understanding, it is impregnable unless it's from dragonfire, like unless it's a dragon coming up. I love the Eyrie. Like, that's probably my favorite castle in the books. If I remember correctly, there's like three castles and three layers. So, like, there's, what is it? It's like land, snow, and sky castle.
Yeah.
I'm something like that. I'm probably wrong on one of them. It's been a while. So, like, you can't even get up there. I remember when Catelyn tries to go up there, she's scared out of her mind. And she's like, just haul me up in a basket. Like, I don't care. And it's nearly impossible to like traverse unless you're like a Sherpa or whatever
Right.
Westeros has. But seeing this castle, like I got so excited about it because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I forgot that, this was going to take place. I wasn't sure if we were actually going to get to see it. And on one hand, in real life, a castle like that is absolute fiction, fantasy. It couldn't exist. You have to be able to get your supplies up and down. Like it makes no sense, really. It's the most fantastical castle, I think, in the story. So I think, despite that, it's still my favorite because it's the most imaginative. It's very whimsical.
Yes, I love it.
And I also liked Lady Aaron as well because you get the sense that she is just over it. You get the idea that the lords and ladies of Westeros are just, they're over the Targaryens and their bullshit and their petty squabbles and the fact that, like, they just want to live their lives, but it's like, oh, here we are again, like, caught in a feud between these people. That's great.
I mean,
Wonderful.
unless you're a Bracken or a Blackwood and you're using this as a platform to further antagonize your rival.
Yeah. I love how Daemon is like, yeah, you know what time it is? It's time for some war crime. Like, he's out here doing the Tywin Lannister equivalent of like sending the mountain to pillage and plunder.
Yeah, the Riverlands seem to be really susceptible to that.
What is it about the Riverlands?
Yeah, everybody
poor
wants
people.
to do that in the Riverlands. Though it was interesting to me that, like, Daemon shows up, he's got Caraxes with him, and he's like, what do you want to do? You want to bend the knee or you want to die? And the guy's like, I'll die. And then turns around and walks away, and Daemon does nothing.
I thought that was pretty funny, like the cut scene of him sitting there, like, I didn't think they would choose fire.
But then he was like, also respect on choosing fire.
Right. Oh my God. I mean, they are giving Matt Smith a lot of kind of like funny situations here.
Yeah. What do you think about how he gets out to Harrenhal and then decides that he's going to start raising a host for himself? So now we're going to have a third Targaryen fighting for the crown.
He needs to put down the peyote. This whole King Daemon thing. I understand that they need something for his character to do while everyone is kind of like recalibrating. I'm not sure how much I like this whole King Daemon plotline. I was hoping that it would kind of be wrapped up by now.
Yeah, we're kind of revisiting an old storyline where he's back at it.
Yeah, but I think like the characters around him are so much fun that I'm not too upset about it. I'm still thrilled every time we go back to Simon Strong and I'm like, there he is.
His little king consort comment was probably my favorite comment in the entire episode.
Yeah. Yeah, what would you call the wife of the queen? And he's like, the king ... consort. Oh, Simon Strong, forever in our hearts.
Forever. What did you think about Bela's conversation with her grandfather, Corlys?
I really liked it. I don't
Yeah.
think there wasn't anything in this episode that I necessarily really disliked. Corlys was really great. Bela was great. I love that they gave her the agency where he was like, I want you to be the heir of Driftmark. Now we are revisiting these like last wishes of Rhaenys.
Yeah.
And it would have been sad if he had given it to someone else or offered it to someone else first. And so her turning it down felt like a really cool moment, I guess.
Yeah, I really appreciated how she turned it down, like by telling him, I'm fire and blood. The heir to Driftmark needs to be salt and sea.
Mm-hmm. It makes navigating this problem a little bit less like icky because you don't want Corlys to be that bastard who's like, screw what my dead wife wanted. I'll give it to a boy, you know?
Right.
I also think too, like in terms of like a hand for Rhaenyra, it was really smart on her part to offer it to him. And I think he was absolutely valid in like milling that over and not being sure.
I agree with that too. I think from Rhaenyra's side, like, Corlys is probably the most trustworthy option.
And I think the most like battle tested, like
That too, definitely.
he's been out there in these streets for a while when everybody else has kind of been having their internal squabbles. So like I do think he'll be like a keen advisor to her, but also the only drawback is Corlys is like fairly power hungry himself.
That's true.
He does want a lot of prestige for his line and his family. So I mean, could work out okay, could work out not so okay.
I mean, I think we kind of know ultimately it works out not so okay, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see where the show takes that. With not only with Corlys and the hands situation, but where Corlys moves from this point on about naming an heir to Driftmark.
Yeah. I think overall, I felt like a lot of excitement with this episode, especially where it ended. That conversation between Jace and Rhaenyra, we need more dragons. And he's like, we have plenty of dragons. We need dragon riders. And I kind of liked that. It was very like knowing but unspoken, where he was like, well, there are other Targaryens out there who could, non-Targaryens who could ride a dragon. And she's like, oh, like the bloodlines would be thin. But she's talking to her son who is not not full-blooded Targaryen. Like he's a strong, everybody knows it. He knows it,
Yeah.
she knows it. They can't say it. But like when he said that, it almost for a second, it almost looked like Rhaenyra's eyes got big and she was like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's given her the like, Mom, I'm not full-blooded Targaryen or even a combination of Targaryen and Valyrian.
Right.
Because Valyrians have dragon riders too. What did he say? He said something along the lines of there could be hordes of them out there.
Yeah.
And then she was like, should we put a Manderly on a dragon? I love how the Manderly name is always brought up in some like semi-shaded way.
I like the Manderleys. Aren't they have the merman sigil, right? Is that them?
I don't, is it them? Because I thought maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know all the heraldry.
God, I need to reread. The way that they ended this, though, kind of like Dragon Riders are coming, the Dragon Seed plotline is what I was most looking forward to this season. And
Yes.
like, it's finally here. And I think too, that's another contribution to like me really liking this episode is because despite some people feeling like it was really, really slow, I felt like, all right, now they're like kicking into one of my favorite plot lines. So let's go.
I really like this episode because it was more than just shock value scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Us watching big battle scenes with dragons is very visually entertaining, but it doesn't do a whole lot to move the storyline forward.
A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, it's so beloved by people because I think they enjoy the character development. And this brings back a complaint that I had about this season where like I didn't feel that like I don't know that shock, I guess, when Blood and Cheese happened because I've essentially spent no time with Helena. When Arik and Eric had their fight, it was like, oh, that's sad, but like whatever. I don't know these characters. They've had like no time.
Right.
Getting to sit down and spend time with the characters and understand them, this is the only way that you can have that connection to them when you get the shocking moments.
I agree.
It's needed. It's necessary.
I would definitely agree with that. It makes me think back to like, we're going to set aside A Song of Ice and Fire and just like talk about Game of Thrones itself. Like when I say this, but if you think about the character development that happened in that show and how it played a role in making some of the scenes of that show that much more like shocking.
Absolutely. Think about all of the like major deaths that happen. Daddy Ned, and not saying that that's an easy one to recreate because it's not, but even the death of Catelyn was wild. Even Viserys, Dany's brother Viserys, when he died, it was probably like still very shocking, even though he's not like a loved character, but it was still like, oh my God, like, it was like cathartic in some type of way. But we had been spending so much time with these people, and this show is just breakneck speed where it's like plot point, shocking moment, plot point, spend a little bit of time with these characters. And it's really hard. Like, it's really hard to get attached in the same way.
I have a either or question for you.
Yes.
Who would you rather spend the rest of your life with? Viserys from Game of Thrones or Crispy Cole?
Oh, God.
If you had to choose one to spend the rest of your life with, who would you rather?
This is awful.
Oh man, they are both terrible.
I would say Viserys just because Harry Lloyd has a more he has a nicer voice to listen to, even though he's like petulant. So I would just go based on that very surface level option. Kristen Cole, man. You know what? I think too, like it's his passive aggressiveness that just doesn't sit well with me. At least Viserys, you know where that dude stands. He's a rat. Like you know how he is, you know what he's gonna do. But Crispy, that quiet facade to where he's gonna go and say like nasty things behind your back.
Yeah.
I'd way rather have a Viserys type character who's gonna like do it to my face.
Yeah.
Say it to my face.
Plus, I feel like with Viserys, you can be like, yes, you're right. And then he'll shut up
right.
for a little while.
Who's a good boy?
Yeah, just get him a little trinket or something shiny, and I feel like he'll be happy for another couple days.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people asking online, like, who's worse, Joffrey or Crispy Cole? And I'm like, Joffrey by a long shot. Joffrey by a long shot. But I think a more worthy either or for Crispy is Viserys, because they are both like really headstrong about having things their way and really rigid about why things should go their way.
Yeah, that's true. I've got a question for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
So in these Daemon like tripping in Harrenhal scenes, if you could have him go on a vision quest with any character from a Game of Thrones, like you could bring a character back and Daemon have like a nice, trip with them, who would it be and why?
Tywin Lannister.
Oh, okay.
Daemon needs to he needs to encounter somebody who has a harder will than him. And there's nothing I'd love more than to watch Tywin Lannister tell Daemon about himself.
That's true. I wonder how that meeting would go, honestly.
Well, I bet I could count on Tywin to be condescending and critical the entire time.
I don't know if like Daemon needs like tough love or like the Tywin tough love where he's like, you're an idiot. Like
but Tywin doesn't leave it at just you're an idiot. He's like, you're an idiot and here's the 50 reasons why.
Yeah, but he's also kind of like, you know what to expect from him. Like he asks things of his children that his children just like completely negate and do other things for. Like, we're gonna leave Tyrion aside because Tyrion's had it rough, but like Jamie, imagine like growing up as a Lannister and you've got like the whole world as your oyster, right? And you're just gonna throw it away because you're a child and you want to be a knight and like that seems cool. So you're like, I'm
Right.
gonna become a Kingsguard. And Tywin is just he has to be like, oh, you idiot. You idiot.
You know who I like kind of thought of for a brief second was having Daemon engage with Cersei Lannister.
Oh, that would be entertaining. That would be sheer like messy entertainment.
Instant arch nemesis.
I'm trying to think of like, I mean, like you could pick like a Danny, but I think that would just be too boring.
Yeah, I was gonna say boring.
He's already had like his fair share of Targaryen visits.
It would be funny to watch him engage with Ned Stark. I feel like Ned Stark's head would explode from annoyance. Because Ned is so serious and Daemon is so perpetually unserious.
Yeah, that's true. Bring back hot pie.
Who would be your choice for him? Yes, bring back hot pie.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go the route of like who would be like who would help him the most in his like journey or like who do I want to watch him just act belligerent to and with. I would probably have to pick some type of like mystical character.
Ooh.
Like a Melisandre or like a Maggie the Frog or I don't know, somebody like that. Those blue-lipped freaks from Karth.
Oh my God.
Pyat Pri, is that one of them?
Yeah, from the House of the Undying.
Or Dragon Hagar. Just someone like mystical.
Yeah, that would be fun too. I mean, he definitely should just go on a trip across the world, tripping like
Vision quest.
a vision quest of hallucinations across the world. Oh.
I think with this episode though, like it's hard because like there's not a lot of like there's only so many ways that I can say I enjoyed it.
I just want to get to the part where we see some non-Targaryens bonding with dragons. And we already know Hugh is going to be one of them.
We know Hugh. We know Huey. Ulf.
I hope this isn't like too much of a spoiler, but it's already been confirmed that the Nettles character was like dropped, right?
I don't know.
Okay, I would have to recheck that. But like I've been seeing a lot of discourse about people saying like, oh, they've dropped Nettles and they're going to go with
Rhaena.
Yeah, Rhaena. Which that wouldn't be upsetting for me because I want to see her get a dragon. Like, it breaks my heart for her.
Yeah, same. And I think too, like if it is her that gets that dragon, that is like that's a scary dragon too. Like that's
We're talking about Vermithor, right? Or Sheep Stealer.
Nettles gets Sheep Stealer.
Okay.
So if that's the case, I'm pretty sure that's a pretty like ferocious one.
Yeah, I really enjoy that dragon's name more so than probably any of the others.
You know what? Talking about dragon names,
I also enjoy
thinking...
Cannibal too because
it's so metal.
It's such a death metal dragon.
It is. It is. I was thinking about this today. Danny really like the worst dragon names ever. Drogon, like you named your dragon Drogon. It's basically like calling your dragon dragon. Like she could have tried a little bit harder.
She could have, definitely. She could have given them much better names.
I don't know. I think so. We've got Vermithor and Cannibal are the next like biggest two, I think, if I'm correct.
I don't have my little sheet. I don't have my little study guide for the size of the dragons. But on my study guide, it shows that like if you think Drogon is a big dragon, the actual size difference between like Drogon and Vhagar and Sheep Stealer and
Yeah.
cannibal is an immense difference in size.
Yeah. I like how my guide has my guide has a whale for like a size
I
comparison.
think it's this. Is it the one from Reddit?
Uh, this one isn't, but the one from Reddit had like the writers for them,
Yeah.
I think.
That's the
But it
one I
has,
have is the one from Reddit that has like all of their writers listed underneath them too.
and honestly, Lady Erin, she shouldn't be so upset because it seems like bonding with a young dragon is way easier than bonding with.
An established dragon who's already set in its
Yeah,
ways. Yeah, I feel like it would be a lot different rolling up on a little baby dragon and being like, "Hey bud, want to be friends?" than to roll up on a full-grown dragon and be like, "I hope you don't eat me in the process."
I'm excited though. Like I keep saying this, like after 2 weeks ago, actually seeing the dragon battle, we know where this is going. We all know what's gonna happen. People are gonna die. Dragons are gonna die. I don't know why I'm so excited for the dragon seeds when I know that it's just gonna be more carnage.
I just
But
want to see more dragons.
yeah, that's true. I want to see the more like the artistic renderings of them.
Exactly. Not that I dislike the dragons we've already spent time with, but, I'm kind of bored of them. Let's move on and see some new dragons. This show is supposed to be a dragon extravaganza.
Give us the dragon extravaganza.
Let me go to Dragon Con in show.
I loved how sometimes the way that they write things for Rhaenyra is so funny. Like the one episode where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna sneak you into King's Landing," and she's like, "Shall I just like scale the building and jump into Alicent's room?" But in this episode, they were like, she's like, "Well, I could go to King's Landing," and Jace is like, "You mustn't, you can't," and she was like, "Vagar is big, but
Cyrex is
Syrax is
faster.
faster," and it's like, oh, like that'll get you somewhere. Delusion,
I
delusion.
don't know how it's going to matter if Cyrex is faster if Vagar gets a hold of Cyrex. You'd be totally dependent on Vagar never, like, actually getting Cyrex into its clutches.
Yeah, I don't know. That did give me some glee. I thought that was a pretty funny line.
I did not watch the previews for next week. I don't know why. I normally do.
I did this time.
Oh, okay.
A lot of it was like a voiceover of Rhaenyra talking about how like claiming a dragon is super deadly and like hey, like kind of like hey you people, some of you aren't going to make it out of this.
I mean, if I were given the option, I'd probably take the risk.
Oh, same. Same. Especially if I was younger, if I had the delusional confidence of like a teenager, absolutely.
Absolutely. You wouldn't be able to stop me.
Yeah. And I would go for the most like pretty one too.
Absolutely. It's all about aesthetics.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we look,
Like
I'd be like, do we look good together?
exactly.
Can we get like matching jewelry or something?
Yeah, like the drip. It's got to match
Yeah,
the
my dragon's gonna
aesthetic.
be dripping.
Mm-hmm. The pink one. I do like that pink one. I forget what its name is.
I'll take the pink one, please.
Right?
If it were me, I'd be like, do you have a purple one in stock?
Dragon shopping. I mean, this next episode should be titled Dragon Shopping.
Yes.
It'll probably be dragon seeds, which disappointing.
Close enough.
Close enough. All right, that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, please like, please subscribe. We will be back next week. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you then.